Thank you for listening to the BJJ Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJBrick Podcast. This week we have John Will on the show. This is episode 259. John's been on the show a number of times and always has great things to say. Stay tuned for the interview. I'm on the line with my good buddies and musical geniuses, DJ PayPal and Lil Spandex. How you guys doing today?
Man, Little Spandex here, just shooting off the cuff. I'm doing really well.
Yep,
Awesome.
DJ PayPal is what they call me, because collect the money digitally, I guess, and spin the records just right.
Yeah, Byron, I know you're working on a new mix. When is that dropping?
Well, the latest and greatest, guys. We not only have a episode with John Will, a quote from Jordan Burroughs, amazing article that's going to help you stay healthy on the mats. We also have a mat tail, and I have pieced together the music required to put a mat tail in. And
a new mat tail?
A new mat tail.
Yeah.
Nice. That's almost retro.
Yeah.
So
bringing it back. Yeah.
This will be
awesome.
This will be a great episode for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah,
And,
but you know what you forgot to mention that we got going on?
what do we got, G?
Byron, your first year of BJJ. It's Byron's audio book. We have a link to it on the show notes. Only $11.99 for 2.5 hours of content. Basically going to walk you through your first year of jiu-jitsu, the tough year, the year that a lot of people drop out. So definitely check it out. It gets great reviews. And, I always talk about this. Joe always makes fun of me. What's the best thing about jiu-jitsu? It's the benefits of jiu-jitsu, and that's one of the chapters. How many people have you met from your gym or, in your city that have lost, 60, 70 pounds from doing jiu-jitsu, have went off blood pressure medicine, just really changed their lives. And that, Joe, is the best thing about jiu-jitsu,
Awesome,
besides
man.
the camaraderie.
And for $15, you can get the musical version where Byron raps through the whole thing.
That
If you
one
can find the
actually
link.
is my favorite. Yeah, that one's my favorite.
That's the best thing about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's that's a disaster. The funny thing is, Joe's the only one that here that has any musical ability, and it's a beatbox. So
Something like that.
he carries that around with him wherever he goes.
Joe is really a jack of all trades. Beatbox, mariner, carpenter,
Skateboarder, firefighter.
Yep. You name it, Joe can do it.
Well, I don't know about that, but
That's one thing. If you're listening to our show, send us an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com and let us know one thing and you want to find out if Joe can do it, and we'll find out. We'll ask him.
Yeah,
So,
I like this, Gary.
what can Joe do is our new episode.
Can you
a
juggle,
brand new
Joe?
segment. I can. Well, it depends. Is throwing one ball up and down juggling?
It's a gray area.
No.
Probably not.
Then the answer would be no.
What about ride a unicycle?
Well, actually, we could start a new segment. What would you like to see Joe try this week?
I like it.
That'll be on our Facebook
Byron
page.
has a unicycle.
Yeah, that is true. I possess one. Whether I could do it or not is a whole different thing. It's very difficult. We do
I'll still never
have
forget.
an off the
I was
mat
training.
lesson. Who was that, Gary?
I was training in your garage one day with you, and I look over and there's a unicycle, and I was like, what the heck is that? So kind of cool.
It's the most messed up bike I've ever owned. It's exhausting. It's not efficient, and I fall a lot. But
I love the way you made it so you don't fall as much. You took the seat off.
no. Oh, Gary, it came that way. You buy it at the specialty store like I did. We do have an off the mat lesson I want to run by you guys real quick. Nothing super crazy, but it just shows like a little bit goes a long way sometimes. I've got several neighbors. I live in a cul-de-sac. One of my neighbors is moving. Put a sign up in her yard, and for sale. And then my other neighbor we kind of have a thing where we put our trash out to the curb the same day, and then the first person home, which is a lot of times me, I get home at 7 in the morning, and if the trash has been picked up, I walk hers to her house, and I walk mine to my house. But if like the trash is a little different time or whatever, and she's able to do it, she'll do it, depending on when they come by. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of our little cul-de-sac thing. So the other day, my neighbor texts me and says, hey, I just let you know I'm having some knee surgery. And she's an older woman. She lives by herself. Older is a little bit of a stretch. Around Gary's age. No, just kidding. She's older than that. Her kids are old. Her kids are grown and moved off, and she's by herself. And I said, okay, let me know if there's anything I can do around the house. I'm here a lot. And she said, well, can you take my trash to the curb? Like super easy. Yeah, no problem. I'll be happy to do that. So I do that, and so I'm doing that. It's literally 30 seconds extra while I take my trash out to the curb. And my other neighbor, I texted her. I said, how's the house sale going? And she says, oh, it's kind of slower than I thought. She's forced by owner. She doesn't. I think Gary mentioned this a little bit a few weeks ago that his neighbor's trying that. And I texted back and forth of where she's wanting to move. And we just kind of chatted. And they both have me at probably a more favorable rating than approval rating than I deserve, because I'm doing little things that show a little bit of attention or that I care. Like dragging my neighbor's trash to the curb is not worth the amount of credit she's giving me for it. Checking on my neighbor to see if she's doing okay, my other neighbor that's selling her house, make sure you're going okay, and that sort of thing. They really appreciate that. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. If you could do a little favor for somebody, a lot of times it may be little for you, but it might be big for them. And just look for ways to help out your team, help out new people who are there visiting the gym. If you could do a little thing, it just makes the gym so much more welcoming and inviting. I'm going to try to carry the same thing over to my new neighbors when I get one, and try to keep that going. But just look for a small thing. It doesn't have to put you out, or I'm not mowing their lawns, although I probably could, but she has a lawn mowing service. But even that wouldn't be that big of a deal. If you do little favors for people, they surprisingly, they really appreciate it a lot of times. And that's kind of speaks to my neighbors as well, that they do appreciate that. Some people you do a favor for and they could care less and they don't really thank you. But I try to do that at the gym. Try to help people out, do some favors for people, and it makes the gym experience more positive for everybody. Because I feel good when I'm doing it, and it's really not that great of a thing. I mean, I'm not saving anybody's life or doing anything that's that difficult, but I like helping people.
You say you're a good neighbor, but you and Gary have been friends for a long time, probably have a lot in common. And a common theme that I'm sensing is your neighbors are leaving in droves. No, that's a really great lesson. And one thing that I find that people really appreciate, and I think it's really easy, is to give a specific positive feedback to people after you roll with them. It's one thing we always say, nice roll, good job. But, if you're paying attention, you can almost find something with everybody to compliment them on. Your grips were improving, that Kimura was really tight, something concrete and positive, and I think it goes a long way. I agree with you, Byron. It takes almost no effort, and it can pay big dividends.
So just look for I think the key is to look for the opportunity, or sometimes you could ask people, but when you ask them, it kind of puts a burden on them. But offering is also it just shows that you're open to help out, or anything like that. It goes a long way. We do have a quote this week, and I don't know for sure. It's on Jordan Burroughs' website. It's hard to find a name attached to this, but that might be it. It never gets easier. You just get better. And I was having a conversation a little while ago about jiu-jitsu, and somebody was saying, when will I feel like I'm good at jiu-jitsu? And my response is, a lot of times I go home, I feel like I'm not good at jiu-jitsu. Sometimes I go home and I'm like, yeah, that was really good. But it's not really a thing about how good I actually am. It's a feeling. I think I'm getting better at jiu-jitsu as time goes, but I don't always feel that. I think as a blue belt, I probably had more confidence than I do a lot of times. Like I'm really good. I'm a blue belt. Yeah. Sometimes as a brown belt or a black belt or whatever, it's like, man, this is really deep, and there are a lot of really good people at jiu-jitsu. but I'm comparing myself to different things, and none of them are comparing myself to me. But yeah, it never gets easier. You just get better, and sometimes it's hard to tell when you're getting better.
Yeah, that's the toughest part, trying to find out when you're getting better. Normally, the guys you're training with, they're all learning the same thing. They know how to shut your game down. Your instructor's teaching it. We're all, going through the motions with that particular move and concepts, and you don't really understand how you're getting better or see that you're getting better. But I think that's one of the big things, like Joe just said a minute ago, is make sure you're really telling people. It's like constructive feedback, and really just let them know you're getting better. Just talking to your teammates, telling them, letting them know. And it's cool when you see somebody who hasn't been training long and they are getting better, and you actually take the time and sit with that person and say, hey, man, you're getting so much better. This is what you really did well today. And you see that smile in their face, or you just see their eyes start glowing. And you know that probably nobody has taken the time to say that they are getting better just because of the way they reacted. So, definitely, as Joe said earlier, take the time to let people know, because it is tough to tell when you are getting better in your own room, going against the guys who are learning the same stuff you are.
I think part of the fun of jiu-jitsu is that it never gets easier. That's true. There's always a challenge. If every time you swung the bat, you hit a home run. And I think actually during the interview, John Will talks about this. If every time you went fly fishing, every cast, it was an awesome fish on the end of that line, that's not fun anymore. So the challenge and getting closer to reaching it, or to sometimes reaching it, I want to have a good armbar. And then for a while, I feel like, hey, I got a great armbar. Like, that feels really good. The sense of developing your craft is a very rewarding experience. And it seems like, to me, jiu-jitsu is developing parts of my craft, not the entire thing at the same time. But I feel like, man, I've really got this part of my game is doing awesome, and that's a really good feeling. And I think that jiu-jitsu provides that in a world sometimes that we try to avoid challenges, and I think we need that to do well emotionally. We need challenges that are reachable, but are difficult.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting about jiu-jitsu is it can deceive you a little bit. Sometimes you might think, I'm really good at an armbar, when the truth is everybody in my gym really stinks at defending against the armbar. And other times you can think, man, I just can't do a Kimura. I can't finish anybody with it. And the reality is you're alone with a bunch of guys that are good at defending against it. So using wins and losses as a determination, like in the gym, wins and losses as a determination is not a really good way to gauge your progress, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is a good quote. I'm not sure it's from Jordan Burroughs, but if it is, it's awesome, and if it's not, it's still a great quote. But it's hard to tell. Sometimes with the internet, there's more things out there that are confusing when you look something up like that. But I do know he's a fan of the quote because it's on his website.
So, hey, if you coined that phrase, go ahead and let us know.
Hey, so this is a fun interview. I happened to just message Joe a little bit before the interview. Hey, I'm getting ready to call John Will. Let me know if you're up for jumping on here. He said yes. I was like, oh, sweet. So this is adds another dimension.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Appreciate the opportunity to sit in, and man, you could sit there and talk to John Will all day and just learn a ton. So it was great.
Yep. I want Joe to ask more questions, but like it was so. Me and John have such a history as far as like bouncing. Like I have more questions I didn't get to ask, and I know Joe got in a couple of times, but I'm gonna try to get in the habit of when I'm getting ready to interview somebody, send Joe a message and get him to hop on with me, and I really appreciate the way Joe thinks about jiu-jitsu and like things off the mat, on the mat, and all these things that we talk about. It's different than me, but it's always from a well thought out perspective. And I think that our interviews, if we are, I don't know how our schedules match up, like in during the week, because we always do our recordings on the weekend. But if you're able to hop on interview, that's going to be add great value, I think, in the future interviews that we do. So hoping to do more of that. We'll see.
Looking forward to it, man.
Let's roll an interview with John Will. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
His Facebook page has twice as many likes as the BJJ Facebook page, because everyone who likes the BJJ Facebook page also likes his page. But then their moms go and like his page too. He can toe hold a duck. The first time he took his opponent's back, he never returned it. It now sits on his mantle in a jar of formaldehyde.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Podcast. Go for the submission, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to welcome back to the BjjBrick Podcast, John Will. John, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Byron.
Pleasure to have you back. And also, we kind of have two people to try to handle you. We've got Joe on the line as well. He's going to be involved in the interview somewhat. Joe?
Hey, how you guys doing? It's a pleasure to be on the line with you, John.
Yeah, nice to talk to you, Joe.
John, we've had you on the show a couple times before, and I definitely recommend that people go back and listen to those interviews. Your blog is highly recommended. You post very consistently, and it's always insightful things, and it's just usually like a quick read, and it's like, oh, that makes you think a little differently about that topic, and I definitely appreciate that. But John, if you could just kind of introduce a little bit of your background to us, that'd be great, and we'll get started.
Yes, I live in Australia, and I started martial arts when I was quite young with wrestling, before the traditional martial arts, some karate and taekwondo and so forth. And then when I finished my high school, I decided to start traveling. So I traveled very young, about 18 years of age. I headed to Asia and started making my way through Indonesia and Thailand and India and Japan and doing training in different kinds of martial arts. And I found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in about the mid-1986. And at that time, I had just started Australia's martial arts magazine called Blitz. So that gave me an excuse to train and travel, and went to Brazil and met the Machado brothers down in Brazil before they came to America, and got into BJJ back in the mid-80s.
Yeah, it's a amazing start, and it you're well traveled, and you've been doing martial arts, including Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for a very long time, and I don't know. I'm always excited to have you on the show, and I can't believe it's been about a couple of years since we've had you on since last time. So just thrilled to get you back here. And you write these great articles I mentioned about your blog, and one of them that I wanted to talk to you about is comparing the extraordinary, or finding the extraordinary in the ordinary things, and how we can think about that on and off the mat. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I think that goes to noticing, to noticing things and extracting more. Maybe it also goes to curiosity, being curious about things like we are when we're a kid, right? I guess if we think about it, when we're children, you find the extraordinary in simple things. You don't have to dig too deep to find the extraordinary. You look at a butterfly or a lizard, or you're swinging off a rope, and you find the extraordinary in those simple things. So, and I think as we get older, it's easy to lose sight of doing that, because we get into not me, but many people get into the routine of just their life, 9 to 5 and all of that kind of stuff, and they go on automatic pilot a bit. And I think when you go off automatic pilot, and you start looking at stuff, you can find the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I think that's very important if you want to be happy. And certainly on the mat, if you want to, you can have a look at a subject. Last 2 weeks we've been working on crucifix at my school. You can have a cursory look at it, 4 or 5, half a dozen ways to get into the crucifix, and then 6 or 8 finishes from the crucifix. And that's the ordinary part. And then you start to look deeper and look at all the little problems that your partner can give you, the ways he's going to escape. Start to figure out how you're going to transition when he's going to escape. And soon, of course, when everyone knows you're going to do crucifix on the mat, because that's what we're kind of working on, then you have to be more creative about ways of creating those opportunities rather than just spotting them, and turn from being an opportunist into like a hunter of crucifix. And so that's all, and that forces you to dig down, and then of course you have much more extraordinary experience rather than just the ordinary experience. So yeah, I think it's important for life, not just for training, of course.
Yeah, as a tremendous way to look at life and training. I know I'm going to have a lot of tangents because you say something and I want to learn about it. You mentioned you've been working on crucifix for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How do you set up a training schedule, or how do you decide? Crucifix for 2 weeks, and then what's next, and how long on that, and how's that work?
I think I like design. I like the idea of being detailed in class and being thoughtful about the delivery, and I'm really into design of classes and design of training, because I think design matters. I think it changes outcomes, in everything, right? Architecture, engineering, BJJ, cooking, it doesn't matter. So I think design matters. And so rather than just turn up a class, probably like I did 30 years ago, and say, what do I feel like doing tonight? I usually have a bit of forward planning and thinking for every class that I teach. And I started developing that idea and that skill to the degree that I have it by doing lots of seminars. I've probably done I think I've done nearly 2,000 seminars now. So when you do that, you get feedback and you see different outcomes, and so you start to think, well, if I design it this way, I get a better outcome. So in terms of the crucifix question, that's my advanced class I'm talking about. An advanced class at my school, I've got novice, intermediate, and advanced. I've actually got introduction, novice, intermediate, and advanced. So my advanced class is blue belts and up. So I really separate out between white belt and blue belt, like first nighters, from first and second stripers, from third to fourth stripers, and then when you get a blue belt, you get into the advanced class. So I separate them all out. So that was in my advanced class. And in a topic like crucifix, I might hang on that teach it for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. It depends on the topic, of course, Byron. If it's a topic like Das Anaconda, it's more a little bit more simple. So I might cover that off in 4 or 5 nights, and then leave that to everyone, and then move on to another topic, but something more complicated like Ashigarami, where you could be on that for months. So it just depends on the topic. But usually, yes, I like to kind of pick in my general class. I like to pick a topic and work on it for a couple of weeks, and then maybe change topics. And then I might have a theme that I work on for a season. So it might be attacking for 3 months. Of course, crucifix being a subset of that, right? And then I might flip it around and work on escapes and defense, and then I might flip it and work guard work, and then I might flip it and work takedown or transitions and something. So I have a kind of a other way around, micro approach and then a macro approach and then a larger approach. Does that make sense?
Is it? Yeah, that makes sense. Is it important that the students know that this is happening, or do they just show up and then you're teaching this, or do they understand the bigger themes that are behind the framework?
Yeah, I don't talk about it or too much, meaning I don't talk so much about my planning and why I'm doing it. So they kind of know, by being there a few nights, everyone knows that we're on to crucifix. So I originally got hold of this. It's not a new idea. I'm sure everyone does it, So, but I'm just thinking out loud, right? Which I guess is what talking is. So you got to be careful. But I remember my instructor Hegan Machado way back saying there's a difference between I apologize for vegans and vegetarians, but if we're going hunting, are we going hunting, say, to put food on the table? So if we're going hunting for food on the table, we will get whatever jumps out of the bush, right? Rabbit, alligator for Joe, or moose. So we'll get something that whatever jumps out because it's just whatever's there, like armbar, kimura, footlock. But if you're wanting to develop a skill, like I'm a deer hunter, then you ignore everything that jumps out of the bush because you're very focused on something and you stay focused. Now, there's less likely you put food on the table, but you learn a lot more about that subject and about its habits and where it is and so forth. So there's a big difference between being opportunistic and being really focused and hunting something. And so if you want to get really good, you go through a period of hunting that thing down. And, of course, the mat soon realizes, oh, my goodness, you want inside heel hook, because everyone's jumping for the inside heel hook. They're backstepping for it. There's scissor takedown for it. They're looking for that. And, of course, then they start defending, and then you have to, evolve it and come up with better and more novel ways to get it. So it's kind of like an arms race then between the defender of it and the attacker. So and that's where I think you start to get depth, whether you want to or not. So, sometimes it's just fun to be opportunistic, of course, right? Just put food on the table, just have fun. So it's going broad, let's say. And other times, you stay focused and you hunt something, and that's where you build your depth. And I think it's nice to have at least a balance between breadth and depth. But the really good guys, like world-class guys, they've all gone depth at some point on not just one subject, but more. So I look at the mat and I see people who are just better than everyone else. And those people are almost always focused on something for a while, until they get bored of it or until they're told to stop doing it. Further to that last little bit, my coach Hegan used to write the name of a technique on a bit of paper, right? So he'd write crucifix, and then he'd write anaconda, or das, and they weren't called these things back then. But or he'd write, ashigarami, or he'd write something like that, or kimura, and he'd drop all these bits of paper in a hat, and everyone had to pick one, and that's the only thing you're allowed to go for maybe 2 weeks. So that was kind of a way of forcing everyone to go, okay, that's me. I'm on Das Anaconda for 2 weeks. And it forced you to not only look for the opportunity because, they're there, but create opportunities to get these things. So that was kind of fun. Did I go off topic? Sorry if I did.
No, that's all good. Do you think that's a good way? I mean, it's definitely a way to make somebody focus on something, but and a lot of us, myself included, have problems finding that focus sometimes. You just go in and you train. But I do see better results in my game when I do have a goal in mind or something that I'm working towards.
In my mind, I think of it like, and this may sound silly, but I think of it like, am I a tourist today? Like I'm just driving around Italy and I'm just checking stuff out, with no goal and nothing particular in mind. That's also very rewarding because you discover things, right? Or no, I'm going to the Uffizi Museum in Florence because I want to see the wrestling grappling statue. Now I'm very focused. So they're both, I think both experiences are really good. They're just different. And I wouldn't say one's more important in a larger scheme of things than the other. I think you need to be a tourist and just roll around and have fun. Because that way you go, oh, wow, I never saw that before. And you stumble across things and you make discoveries. So it's all good. Yeah.
So a lot of people are hearing this and they're wondering, what do I work on next? Any good insight as far as how to find that natural progression in your game and determine it's time to stop working on kimuras and I need to transition to work on arm bars or whatever?
Very subjective, but I guess look, if someone's really confused, like if I'm confused, work on defense, because defense, and that of course means that you could even put the whole concept of guard into that basket, defense, but more particularly escaping bad positions, and that starts with being comfortable in bad positions. So working on defense is always a great default place to go to if someone's feeling a little confused or a little bit lost, because what you're doing when you work on defense is you're building your safety net. You know what I mean by safety net. So if we're two trapeze artists and we've got a safety net, you end up trying more stuff, trying more tricks and pushing yourself. If you take the net away, you'd be very conservative and you're too scared to try anything, right? So when you have a really strong safety net on the mat, then you're willing to try more things. So, because it doesn't matter if you try for an armbar and you lose position, and someone gets on top of you because you're happy to escape from side control. So I think it's kind of always good to work defense. It's always good. That's always a default if anyone's confused. Just start working defense, working escapes, and you're building your safety net. And safety nets are awesome on the mat and off the mat in life as well. And they can be social, financial, or whatever. But when you've got great safety nets, you become more, weirdly, ironically, you become more aggressive. You know what I mean by aggressive? Like, that was the wrong word. Like more of a risk taker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just imagine the classic safety net example, two people up like on the trapeze, 50 feet up in the air. If you were to train this without safety nets, the amount of tricks that they would be doing would be very, very cautious style of tricks. But if you have the safety net, those people could train and do and fall and not die. And they would be, if you had one school that had a safety net and one school without the safety net, the school with the safety net would be way more amazing to watch than perform.
Yeah. Well said. And I think that's really important. And that goes to, a lot of the time, Byron, I think that goes to culture on the mat. What's the culture like? Is the culture one that the culture itself is a safety net? That's you feel good about losing to my buddy, and trying to. So, and that's kind of cool because that allows you to be more, creative. So safety net, but I think that like the nuts and bolts of it is defense, like in jiu-jitsu. I think of the safety net being defense and escapes, not attacks. I don't think that's the safety net. The attacks would be the tricks in your analogy.
Yeah, that's a good way to like your attacks could become more elaborate or just more efficient. I don't know, more efficient. You get more practice at your attacks because when you fail, it's not as big of a negative with you.
Yeah,
and I wasn't thinking about the social aspect, the culture behind that. How does somebody develop a good? I don't know whether to ask you how to develop a good culture, or what does a good culture look like on the mats? Pick one and see where you go with it, I guess.
Well, wow, there's it's like I guess analogous to cultures around the world. A good culture is a difficult question because there's so many. It's almost easier to define a bad culture.
Okay, let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about changing a bad culture because some people are in a small town and there's one gym, and I've talked to many of them, and they're like, I don't want to train at this gym, but this is the only place I have, and I like jiu-jitsu. What do I do? And so, but let's define a bad or a negative culture in on the mats and go from there.
Yeah, I don't want to come across as being negative to anyone, but let me straddle the fence a bit on that, and talk about both sides at the same time, and you can tease it apart, or our listeners can tease it apart. I think I have experienced bad culture on the mat, and I've experienced good culture, and not just on the mat, lots of things. I like the idea that people are. If everyone's selfish, and I don't want to put down fighters because in my heart, I love fighters, but I've seen a lot of gyms where they have a lot of fighters or they have a lot of UFC fighters and stuff like that. They don't tend to be the funnest culture. Now, there's some exceptions, of course, but they don't generally tend to be the best. Let's say the far right of the bell curve is a great culture and the far left is a not so good culture. They don't tend to be the best if it's just all fighters, because fighters by nature have to be selfish to a degree. They've got to be all about themselves, and they start viewing everyone else as the nail, not the hammer, or as the fodder, not the cannon. And so suddenly, you get this selfish aspect, and then that's what do you call it? Contagious. So suddenly someone comes in and a new person's training or a relatively new person, and they look at that, well, he's being selfish, I may as well be selfish. And then suddenly you've got a whole bunch of selfish people. And that won't work on the mat, but nor would it work on a desert island where there's 20 of us all trying to be all about themselves or in the world, you know. So I think that that's a bad culture when people are being overly selfish. The opposite to that is we're on the mat not for ourselves. Now, that seems like a radical concept. So imagine I come on the mat, I'm not there for me, but I'm there for you, I'm there for Joe, and I'm there for all the other guys. I'm not there for me. I'm only there for you and my job is to make you guys better. Now, part of making you better is that I get better to give you a better partner to roll with. You know, I become more dangerous and better with my rolling, a better guard, better passer, and that lifts your game up. But I'm there for you, and my focus is on getting you better. That works really well if everyone's on board with that deal. Because if everyone's on board with that deal and there's 12 people in the class, then 11 of them are there for me. And that is an awesome situation to be in. If there's 12 people there, where each of us as individuals are there for everyone else, that means, very simple math, every single person is there to make me better. But everyone's got to be on board with it. And some people, like in the capitalist society, capitalism works, but there's always an arsehole, you know.
So, hey, John,
yes.
do you address this specifically with your students? How do you create that culture in your gym? Just by example, or do you pull some of your upper belts aside and have conversations about this?
Yeah, I'm a leader. I'm a reluctant leader. But so by example, not 100% by example, I do talk about it. You know, like we just mentioned it. So I'm always talking. Every night I'll talk about some topic. Like every time I go on the mat, like I'll pick a topic like we just picked, and I'll spend 5 minutes talking about it at the end of the class or at the start of the class, but usually at the end as a debrief. So, you know, through those little my mini verbal blog, if you like, at the end of the class each night, I'll talk about the technique, but I'll also talk about something like this. And over 1 year, 2 years, and I've got guys who've been training 20 years with me, you know, so it just starts to pervade. That's what our school's like. And so people get on board with it. So, yeah, it's a combination of, you can feel it. You come on the mat and you'll just get a sense of it in a couple of classes. But I do talk about it, yeah. But I'm one for leading by example. And as I said, I'm an accidental leader. I'm just doing life like I think it should be done, and you look over your shoulder behind you one day and you realise there's a whole lot of people there. So it wasn't a plan, if you know what I mean.
No, that sounds like a good model.
Yeah.
So from a student's point of view, if you're in a gym that is a little bit selfish and people are training more for themselves, I like this example. I had Rafael Lovato Sr. on here a little while back, and he said, train half for you and half for the person you're rolling with. If you both do that, you're going to be getting a lot of good mat time, and a lot of learning will be going on. Said something like that. Not exactly what he said, but so it's important to train and have the other person's learning in mind. If that's not going on at your gym, how could you start to influence that or kind of try to change the culture a little bit?
I don't know. There are actually, I guess there's physical ways. I used to sometimes every now and again do a little roll where I said, okay, here's your goal. You have to tap. So that suddenly means that I'm saying, Byron, I'm giving you permission to tap. So you can, that's a nice way to think about your partner a little bit, right? Yeah. So paper, rock, scissors, I lose. Okay, I've got to tap. I can't tap you. Now, this is not a common thing. We've only done it, you might do it once a year or something, but there are little physical, that's just one example of a way you can actually implement it, get people out of their own heads. But I guess it's it is up to the leader. And when I say the leader, I mean, it's not just the teacher, it's the couple of, the people immediately below that, the top echelon, if you like. That's who sets the tone. So you can put the rules up on the wall, you can write a constitution, you can do whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, but if the top people aren't doing it, it's not going to work. So, leadership comes from the top. The people that are coming on the mat, like many classes are small towns that got everyone in the same class, right, from the brand new white belt through to the black belt or the higher grade. And if those higher grades are acting a certain way, people, when they come onto a mat, when they first walk into an environment, human beings are really usually pretty adept at figuring out, how am I supposed to act in this situation? And they look to the top people for leadership. And they go, well, that guy's walking on the mat saying, hey, bro, so I'll walk on the mat and say, hey, bro. Or that guy says, thank you very much. He thanks each partner before as he finishes. So he does that. People usually don't have to be told too much. They look and copy. So I think it's really a matter of you establish the culture you want through, the 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of the best people, and then everyone else will follow. That's my experience. So, of course, the longer you train, so if I've got someone on my mat that's been training for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they really, by that time, they've bought into the culture that what I'm about. So they're that way. So when people come into my school, they look at all those guys and go, oh, got it, and they behave that way. Or they don't like it and they go, wow, that's not me, and then they go somewhere else, which I'm very happy about. So, you know what I mean? So I think it's, you got to get the top part of the class. You got to get that right. And I think ultimately it'll start with whoever's in charge, because he'll influence the top 3 or 4, and they'll influence everyone else. It was you probably saw it, Byron and Joe, it was a TED Talk. Was it a TED Talk? Something like that. How to start a movement. Ever seen that?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, cool. So it's a simple little thing. It was this. You could probably Google it. It's called How to Start a Movement, and it was about one person at a, I don't know what it was, like a Woodstock, like a concert or something, that everyone was sitting down. One guy got up and started doing some crazy dance, and then another guy got up and copied him, and then 3 or 4 got up and copied him, and then soon you had 5,000 people doing it. So the moral of the story was the first guy was just a crazy person doing something that for whatever reason he felt like doing. The interesting thing was, or the interesting people were, who were his first followers? Those first 4 or 5 people, what drove them to look at that guy and say, that's not a bad idea, I think I'm going to do that, and follow him? And it's the second tier, those 4 or 5 people, that actually started the movement. I guess I'm not religious at all, but if I was, the great example would be in Christianity. It's the 12 apostles that drove it, right? I mean, it could be argued from a theological point of view that the 12 apostles drove it, and Jesus was their guy. So to be really rude, he was the one crazy guy that said this stuff, and a bunch of people went, that is amazing. You know what? I think that's worth following. They jumped up, started following, and then the rest of the world followed them. So sorry about that if I offend anyone, but there it is. So I think that's what also happens on the mat, right? You get someone up the front of the mat, and their personality makes them go a certain way, their life and their backstory, and then you get a number of people saying, this is worthwhile, I'm going to buy into it, and then that affects everyone else. So, yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah, that's a definitely way to do it when you have the upper team there, and with jiu-jitsu it's great because those people can physically do it as well, and they're it's easy to tell who's good at jiu-jitsu and who's not when this guy beats me and then that guy beats that guy and that guy gets tapped immediately by this guy. Okay, he's really good at jiu-jitsu, or she, and it's just okay, they're behaving this way. I like that as a one way to do it. For me, I've noticed, and this is one of my faults, I don't skip very many rounds when I'm training. I'll roll every round I can, but occasionally, if I'm injured or for some reason I'm skipping around, I watch and I'll learn things about the students and how they interact with each other that I can't notice when somebody else is rolling with me. And then I could sometimes just give a quick, hey man, you're rolling pretty hard with that guy who's been here a month or something like that. And just try to kind of push people one way or the other towards that. But I roll with people. I think that, hey, that's great training partner, great to roll with. And I watch them just smash somebody and that shouldn't be getting smashed. And it's a little surprising. I mean, you're kind of a jerk when you can be, and try to correct that behavior there is one thing that I've had some success with.
Well, I certainly think that's maybe one of the number one things that hold schools back from growing. Like if you see, and I've seen plenty of schools and they've got those 20 or 30 students and they can't get beyond that, and it's a lot of the time that's what's going on. It's okay for those fighters. But fighters are only a very small part. When I say fighters, like that's only a small part of the population. Jiu-jitsu, as we all know, attracts a very wide demographic, and the mat, being an equal opportunity landscape, it rewards effort and rewards the better people. So it's kind of a lot of people who would really reap a lot of benefits just get weeded out because there's some munter in there smashing them. And that's one of the reasons why schools don't grow, because people come in, right? They come in all the time. It's not, and school owners who want to make a living out of jiu-jitsu, or they say they want to make a living out of jiu-jitsu and they want the numbers to be big, they want to have a lot of students. And they talk about marketing, weird things like that, like marketing and or advertising and sales tricks. I don't do any marketing. Because all you've got to do, it's not about how much water comes in the top of the bucket. If the bucket's got no bottom in it and the water can go straight out, meaning I'm losing the students as fast as I'm getting them, your numbers will stay the same. But if you plug the hole in the bottom of the bucket, even in summer in Kansas, Byron, like that bucket is going to fill up, like, because the water can't go out. So you've got to stop students from leaving, and then you get a whole lot of students. Not about getting them, it's about stopping them leaving. And how do you do that? By looking after them as human beings. So it's weird to me when I see schools where they don't understand that or they don't do it. And then they lose, they get 10 students a month and lose 10, and they wonder why their numbers don't change. Or they get 10 students a month and they lose 11 and they disintegrate into nothing. And then the best schools get 10 students a month, lose 2 and keep 8, and they get 80 students more every year, So it's important for that. And I'm not talking about business here. I don't care about business too much, but if you want a good jiu-jitsu school, it's good to have numbers, because numbers gives you variety. Numbers gives you richness on the mat. You're getting so many different people doing so many different things. You kind of can't help but be good when you're thrown into that environment. So numbers are important just to create good jiu-jitsu. Otherwise, it's the same 4 guys who know each other's games, beating themselves up in a garage. And that's fun and good, and we've all been there. But there's a ceiling to how good everyone's going to get, because they're going to learn each other's games pretty quickly and work it out. So I think numbers are important. Rich environments are important. So you want numbers even if you do it for free and don't want money out of it. You still want 100 students or 200 students or 300 or whatever the number is.
So looking at how you run your classes, you have like the novice, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and you break that up. Is that part of plugging that hole to make sure they get treated properly as they go through, and especially with the novice?
Yes. Especially like last night, for example, I had 1, 2, 3. I had 3 people. It was their first ever night on the mat last night, right? So if I threw them into a general population class or, an intermediate class or advanced class, I don't know how many of them would stay. I'm guessing, looking at those people last night and how they went, probably unusual. I think one of them would have stayed and two of them would have gone, no way, this is way too hard. So there were two kind of timid and there was one kind of a bit harder. He'd done something before, some Muay Thai, I think. But even he might not have stayed. He might have got flogged by some female white belt and gone, this is too much. So but because they're in the intro class where they are for the first 3 months, there's no rolling. They're not going to roll. So they learned some things, and I taught them, last night it was just how to stay on the mount and then how to take the back and get your seatbelt grip and your hooks in. We did that drill, and that took 30 minutes to get them really working that. And then we did some stand-up work, covering up and moving in and clinching. So all of that was, it's very, it was progressive. It was very achievable. At the end of the class, they all walked away going, wow, I can do that. No one had a bad or a negative experience. So what's the likelihood that they're going to come back? I would say 95%. I will see them all there next Tuesday night. Whereas if they had just been thrown into a general population of people and had one guy beat them up, I don't know if any of them would have come back, right? So if you agree with that math and that design, then how's that going to unfold over a year? Well, here's an idea, over 3 years or 5 or 10. It's going to mean the difference between thousands and thousands of students staying and training or never staying and training. So I think it's important. Now, what I know, I can imagine some people will be hearing this, some school owners, and go, well, I've only got a small school in a little town and there's only 20 people in the class. I haven't got the time or the numbers to warrant a special introduction class. I say that does not matter if there's one person in there or 5, or like, what did I have last night? I would have had 12. But come September, the warmer weather, there'll be 20 in there. It doesn't matter. You just have a 45-minute class, before your other class earlier, and that's what you do. And it's for those people. And it's your chance to just and have 10 classes, like introduction classes, pre-designed, and you just continually rotate through them, 1 through 10, and do it again and do it again. So it doesn't matter when someone joins up. They might join up last night at class number 6, that happened to be staying on the mount and taking the back, and then a bit of stand-up, shell, move in, clinch. Number 7 will be something different, 8, 9, 10, start again at 1, and then never stop doing it. You understand?
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, do you have that thing in America? We have like L plates, when you go for your driver's license, we have L. Do you have that? L plates or learner's plates?
A learner plate, like
it's like a little 6-inch square of yellow plastic with an L on it. We have to put it your first 3 when you're learning how to drive a car. That's got to be inside your front windscreen and your back windscreen. So it tells the world this person is a learner. It might be their very first day on the road. Just, be cool, give them space and be nice. And so, everyone here, they cut learner drivers, they cut them a lot of slack, right? So because they're a learner. And then even when they get their driving license, which my son is going for this morning, they get a P plate. It's a P for probationary. And they've got to put that in their car on the front windscreen and the back windscreen for the first 12 months. So it tells the world that this person is a probationary driver. Again, cut them a bit of slack if they make a mistake or they're, so, and then that comes off. So I think that's a great model. Less people die. And it's the same on the mat. I think you should have an L plate and a P plate and then now you're on, now you're up, now you're running, and that's the advanced class. So I think it's a good way to do it.
And you're saying that's done basically with having them in different classes.
Yes.
When do the students start rolling?
They start rolling after their first 3 months. They start rolling in the novice class.
In the novice class.
And how long are they in the novice class?
They're in the novice class for, I would say, an average of 6 months to around 6 months, because they get their first stripe on. You guys use that method in your own schools? like white belt, 1 stripe, 2 stripe, 3 stripe, 4 stripe, then a blue belt?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
cool.
it does. I don't think ours are as organized as yours are.
Okay, so we have like 1 to 4 stripes, right? So the first stripe will take them 3 months. So they're not rolling in the first stripe. I disagree with the idea of rolling first stripe. Like, how do they know what to do? They've got no. It's like saying, let's play chess. Do you know how the men move? No, I don't. That's cool. Let's play a game. No, you've got to spend at least 5 minutes working out how the different men move. And on the mat, you've got to spend at least 5 minutes, and the 5 minutes comparable in BJJ, in my views, are 3 months, let's say, learning side control, mount, north-south, close guard, passing the guard, and so escaping them out. And you've got to learn the relationships between these different positions and a few basic attacks. And now they've got enough information so when they go into the next class, they can actually perform. Otherwise, I think we're setting people up for a bad experience. Now, if I was a parent, and this is how I learned to swim, which is silly, my dad took me down to the river and threw me out into the water and said, get back. It was a nightmare. Now, I was the kind of personality that went, okay, I'm up for that challenge, and I kept swimming, and then now I can swim well. But I think that 8 out of 10 people, they go, that's it for me, I'm out. That was not a good experience. Whereas a modern day parent, what will we do? I guess, any of you guys got kids?
I've got kids and grandkids.
Cool, right, Joe. So you got kids, so if you've ever taught one of them to ride a bike, I'm sure you picked a nice day and you put training wheels. We have these training wheels on the bike here at the back so it doesn't fall over, and you find a flat bit of ground and you put them on them. So after their first little lesson, they love the experience. They're asking you to do a second lesson. So what's the flip side of that? Let's pick a shit day. Let's get rid of the training wheels. Let's take them up into the mountains on a mountain bike, never having ridden, and throw them down the hill. Now, there's 1 out of 10 kids who are going to go, that's awesome, and they're saying this to you while they're in the emergency ward getting stitched up. I want to go back and do that again. But 9 of them are going to say, I don't want to learn how to ride a bike. So who are we trying to cater for? I want to cater for everyone. I want everyone to learn to do it. Because some of the best people in the world at riding bikes or doing anything aren't necessarily the ones who started out tough. They were the ones who grinded it out, but they had a good, positive beginning, enough to get them addicted. And then their hard work, perseverance, effort, determination, attention to detail, intelligence, et cetera, took over, and they became world class. So by eliminating a lot of 90% of the population, by making it too challenging for them from the first couple of months, you might well be eliminating all these potential world champions or world best, world class athletes. So
or
I think
people,
the first experience has to be a good one.
Yeah. Or you might eliminate people who just like jiu-jitsu and do it for a better part of their lifetime, or they just have their first exposure and don't like it. You don't have to have great success competition-wise to have a lot of benefit with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right. And when people start, they don't care how good you are. It's all about how you make them feel.
Yep.
What was their experience? What was their visceral experience like? Did they walk away saying, wow, that was interesting, thought-provoking, I want to come back and do more? Or do they walk away going, that was hell, let me come back and do more? There are certain people who will go, oh, the more hellish, the better. That is a very, very small part of the population. And it could be argued that it's the part of the population that doesn't need martial arts too. Yeah,
that's you're probably right on that. You talked about getting people into jiu-jitsu. You mentioned your son's having a driver's license test today. What's it like getting your family on the mat and getting them into jiu-jitsu?
It's how I met my wife, so I like that. So I was teaching a seminar, and she was in that seminar. She was already an accomplished martial artist. She was in that seminar, and then we became friends and eventually married, and that was, 30 years ago. What the hell? 28 years ago or something. So, yeah, she's always been on the mat. My son, he's 18 years of age, so he's only been into jiu-jitsu for a few years now, solid, about 3 years. But I kind of discouraged his early participation on the mat. And I did that because I saw a lot of martial artists make their children train when they were kids, and almost exclusively those ones who did that, by the time their kids were at an age where they could appreciate it and be good, meaning 16, 18 years of age, they were over it and sick of it. So I did the opposite. I kind of encouraged him to do other sports, and then let him come to jiu-jitsu and really begged me to do it when he was like 16, and then I caved and let him do it, and now he's really into it. So I took a different approach. Only from what I've seen, it seems to be working. So he's over there now smiling right at me. Make your dad a coffee. Cat, thank you. He's nice. He's making me a coffee. Out of coffee, and yeah. And so I think that, and I love having them on the mat. It's great to be able to do experiments on my son.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when I say experiments, I mean, I can try something. I can say to him, look, here's an idea with, like we're working on crucifix, right? I can say to him today, here's an idea. Try this and see how it goes. Now, I don't tend to experiment too much with my coaching on the students, so experimentation is like a more private thing for me. And then I run the experiments, try different things. They work, they don't work. And when I know something works, then I'll teach it and whatever, right? But he's part of my family and within arm's length, he'll reach from me all the time. So I can try something out with him and then say, yeah, that seems to be good. Go see if it works. And then, see how he goes. So, yeah, it's fun. It's great having my family on the mat. I love it. I think it's really, really nice.
Would you recommend that approach towards not that you didn't push it, you kind of said not yet or wait a little while and make that desire show up versus the opposite? Yes. Or is it depend on the kid, or do you think that's just overall probably a pretty good idea?
I don't know. There's no one way to parent, but I just did it because I saw, almost, I think 100%. I can't think of one martial artist who trained their kids, made them do classes when they were young because they wanted to spend time with them or because of whatever reason. And that kid's still training. They all quit. That was what I saw. So I said, well, I don't want that to happen. And plus, there's a lot of skills to be gained out of other sports, right? Like Felix, my son Felix used to play inline hockey, with the inline skates, for example, for a couple of years at state level. He did really well. Well, sprinting up and down as a skater, you develop, these great quads. So, you jump in his spider guard, you're going to know all about it because he's got legs,
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't matter whether it's gymnastics or swimming or this or that. Jean-Jacques Machado was a fantastic swimmer and a fantastic soccer player as a young kid. So, he, all of that cardio and all of that spatial awareness and this and that, tactics, strategy, he brought all that into jiu-jitsu. And so there's a lot to be gained from other sports and cross-training. So I think get your kids into some kind of sports, but maybe keep them away from the one that you want them to land on. 'Cause that's
John, I'm wondering if you also think there's some value in, especially when your kids are littler and 8, 10, 12 years old, letting somebody else be the coach and just letting you be the father.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I'm sounding very wishy-washy about these answers because, it's worked for me. It doesn't mean it'll work for everyone else, but because my relationship with my son's a unique thing, but so's yours and so's everyone. So it's really hard for me to know to answer that. I mean, I could say something, but it'd just be making it up. I don't know.
I think it would be. I think you would agree to some things. Like if the kid's not enjoying it, to force that on them is probably a bad idea.
Look, I think they've got to. I think it's got to be more about play. Like kids want to play. I mean, you don't have to talk any kid into playing. Kids, and if you look at in Brazil and you look at all the old stuff and the approach that they took, it was not like a strict regimented. You need to come to class. It was just the environment they grew up in. So they were immersed in that environment. They came on the mat and off the mat, and we throw the kids back and forth. You balance them on your feet. You get them to ride the wild horse, which is hooks in, back control. And you play games, and they go, I don't want to do that now. I want to go to the beach. Okay, see ya. And it's just around them. And that's what happened with my son. He saw it. And he saw me on the mat, and he saw his Uncle Hegan since he's, one day old. So now at some part of your brain, then when you turn 16, has been mapping this stuff for 16 years, seeing it. So that is a brain that is absolutely right for teaching, right? As opposed to a brain that's not been around it. So even if our kids aren't training with us, if they're seeing it, it's around them. It's creating an environment in their brain that one day when they say, I really want to do this, that is an absolutely perfectly ripe environment. That is a bit of ground that's had mushroom compost thrown on it for 16 years. Now you could get any seed you want, toss it over your shoulder, doink, and you're going to get this Jack and the Beanstalk reaction. As opposed to some bit of dirt that's never been looked at, and now you're trying to plant the seed. So I think there's something like that going on. I can't back it up with stats or science, but there's enough anecdotal evidence that I feel very confident about that. Because otherwise, let's think about it. So, is it just coincidence that if your last name is Gracie, that you get good at jiu-jitsu? Like, it's around you. You mightn't even like it. Some of them didn't start till they were 20 years old, but they've been around it, they've sniffed it, they've seen it, they've touched it their whole lives. That is a different bit of dirt than someone who decides, I've watched UFC, I like what just happened with that skinny guy beating the big guy, I'm 20 years of age, I think I'll give it a crack. They are two different things. And it's much more likely that the guy with the last name, Gracie, is going to get better at jiu-jitsu, not because his name's Gracie, but because of the environment he's seen his whole life. I think that's it.
Yeah. It might come back to just the culture that person grew up in, and we're talking about culture on the mats. And when your culture at home reflects the mats, you're going to absorb that. Yeah.
And then you're ready. You're riper than everyone else. You're just more prepared. And then, you learn something. You learn like some, spider guard spin under entry to crucifix. It's like, of course. What's complicated about that, Whereas someone who hasn't had that would go, what the hell what is happening?
Yeah, that's some people seem to pick up things really easy, and some people have a hard time picking up some pretty simple things. But there's something in the background of certain people that make it easier or harder, and we all have different things we have to get through.
And with the kids, I mean, it depends on how they were raised too. Like we've raised our son to understand the value of things is in the difficulty. The value of something is in the challenge. So challenge is not a bad thing. It's not something you should shy away from. It's something you should embrace, because it's the challenge of something or the value of something. The challenge or the difficulty, the effort required, that imbues the thing with value. Without that, there is no value. So if we were all into fly fishing and every single cast we caught a 10-pound trout, there is no value in it.
Yeah.
No one would do it. No one would bother with it. the fact that you can't catch a 10-pound trout and it's very difficult to do it, that's what makes us go out and do it and find the joy and the pleasure and the value. Or if there was an escalator to the top of Everest, it'd just be a tourist attraction. There'd be no value. Saying I summited Everest would mean nothing. No one says, I summited the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Wow, did you? That's awesome. We don't assign value to it because there is no difficulty. So if you raise your kid like that, or with all those kinds of things, then it's very likely that they're going to train. And even if they don't, it doesn't matter. You've raised them the right way.
We're talking a little bit about learning stuff on the mat and taking that later on into life. You had an article that was about leverage and being able. We talk about leverage a lot in jiu-jitsu, but leverage something that you've learned on the mat and moving that laterally to something off the mat. And can you explain that a little bit for us?
Well, it's an interesting word, isn't it? Byron, leverage. Every martial artist on the planet's probably uttered that word. And we all know what it means, kind of, right? Leverage. Oh yeah, we use leverage. Okay, whoa, what does it mean? I don't know. I can't give you, but moving a lot with a little, right? We understand the concept of a lever, how to do something. So the simple idea of leverage is that, when you armbar me, not at the start of the armbar, at the control phase, but at the end, right, you're holding the end of my arm, the end of the lever, the hand specifically, to control it. So I'm going to have it, you're on the end of the lever for the maximum. If you move your grip up my arm toward my elbow, I'm more likely to get my arm back, right? So that's the most fundamental kind of leverage that you can experience on the mat. Grab the head, pull it. It works better than grabbing the neck, and that works better than grabbing the shoulders. So if you grab the crown of the head and pull it down, as any wrestler knows, you're going to get a better effect on the spine.
Sure.
So, but then the next thing is, that's a very, I have to relearn it, for every technique. So a higher level, let's say, of understanding leverage is that I learn something about the way a technique works. Let me give an example, what my son Felix is working on right now is he likes bow and arrow chokes. He's trying to hit that from everywhere. So you learn initially a basic bow and arrow choke, and you're learning that you've got the collar, let's say, loosely wrapped around your partner's neck, and you're using some other part of your body to drive him into that collar, be it your legs, your knees, your head, your forearm, so you're trying to drive him in that collar. So if you learn the way that works and you understand broadly what you're trying to do, you can then maybe translate the leverage you understand in one bow and arrow choke to a whole bunch of other positions. And so you're starting to you're starting to develop some depth. You're deepening your understanding of leverage, and you learn it in one technique but apply it in a bunch of others. But then learning to apply it laterally is, I think, much more tricky, challenging, but ultimately maybe perhaps even much more rewarding, certainly life-changing, is that you come to an understanding of how something is working on the mat, and you figure out, maybe I should do that off the mat in my relationship or in my business life or in my finances or in my health or in my diet, and you apply something you've learned on the mat in another area, another completely almost unrelated area of your life, because that there is life-changing. Learning how to do a better armbar is probably not life-changing, right? Could be, but probably not. But if I say, do you want an example of that, for example?
Yeah.
Let's think about this. So I'll just okay. So if you and I hit the mat and we pair up together, and our instructor, who is Joe says, go, start. He teaches us a technique, and then we rep it out. But you and I have got this thing where we just do 2 more reps than every other person on the class. So everyone else is kind of wandering through it, going slow, doing 10, you and I, Byron, we make a pact. We're going to do 12. We are always going to do a minimum of 2 more than everyone in the given time period. So we're being efficient with the recovery. We're getting back and going bang, 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 and we do 2 more. So we do 20% more than everyone else on that night. And then we realize that nothing changes that night. You know, we're not going to necessarily tap more people out just because we've done an extra 2 reps. But if you do that every week, every month, every year, at the end of the year, let's think about it, at the end of 5 years, you've done an extra, you and I have done 1 year's worth more of training than everyone else on the mat. That makes a difference. So then we come to this understanding, just a tiny little bit extra, but over time makes a big difference. So then we go off the bat into our daily lives and go, well, you know what? Instead of saving $5 a week, I'm going to put away, $20 a week. Doesn't sound like much. But over time, over 20 years, putting away that extra little bit of money, doing without the Friday night drink or the Friday night pizzas, and you put it into something, then it grows to the point where you've got enough to then invest it in a property, and then a tenant starts paying it off, and then they pay it off, and then the property doubles in value. It could turn into an extra $1 million or $2 over 25 years. And that's something you can get from the mat. So, that's just a kind of a very simple example, and there's lots of other examples. The way you behave, the way you think about things, the way you look at things. You look beyond the surface. You try to look deeper, but you start to do that off the mat in other things. You realize that you might not like Das anaconda because you got short arms. You're a dwarf. It doesn't even work for you, right? So you try to do anaconda, and Das joke doesn't work. But at least doing, 1 or 2 nights of it, a tiny little bit, even though it doesn't suit your game, is infinitely better than not understanding it. Because you might one day come up against another small person. You go, oh, wow, yeah, I just did that anaconda. That's cool. I did the Das. That's awesome. So then you do that in your life off the mat. You say, I'm not interested in, business. I don't like me. I'm not too interested in finances and business and stuff like that. But I know that spending just 10 hours a year is going to put me infinitely ahead of people who spend no hours a year. So, yeah, I think there's an infinite number of examples the way we can come to an understanding of something through our practice and study of something and then start applying it in other areas unrelated. And I first thought about that idea reading Miyamoto Musashi, Book of 5 Rings, and simple quote just got me thinking, know one thing is to know 10,000 things. And I think that's my favorite quote out of the Book of 5 Rings. Not many people seem to be able to make that lateral jump. But once you point it out to them, they seem to be able to. But it's difficult. The average person seems to have some difficulty doing it, in my experience, by themselves.
Does it take a certain level of mastery to be able to make those realizations, or can somebody their first month, is it typically more easy to access this sort of knowledge if you're better at jiu-jitsu?
That's an interesting question. My instinct there, Byron, was to say no. You need to really have some level of mastery, like have some real depth. But I don't know. I'm second guessing myself on that now because I just asked myself, what is it about the mastery aspect that's going to give you that? It's the fact that you've seen something. So you've seen something happen. So, you may be able to do it without necessarily mastering something if you can see evidence that, oh, yeah, right, what he said about that thing is working, and I also see him doing it in his life. Yeah, I'm going to try to do that right now. I guess I'm talking about what I call fast forwarding. It's a little I don't know if I've written about this at all, but it's a little idea a trick. It's a learning trick that I have used for a long time, since I was a kid as far as I can recall. I ask myself a couple of questions. So you teach me something, Byron, that I don't know, right? Something I've never done before. Anything, throwing a frisbee, drop Cianagi, it doesn't matter, right? You teach me something I don't know anything about. I ask myself this question. If I did 500 more practices of this thing, sessions or reps, would I be better? Now, the answer is invariably yes. Agreed? So
as long as I'm teaching you something the right way, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but even if you're not, like if I pick up a frisbee with no instruction and I throw it 500 times, I'm going to be better at the end of the 500 than I am now, right?
Sure.
With almost no instruction. So that's not the interesting question. The interesting question is the second question, in which I ask, well, what would that look like? Okay, so I don't know about throwing frisbees, so let's guess. It will be what smoother release, right? So I release it at a better time. I get more flick in my wrist. I start to use my body more, right? So we're going through this, you and I right now, visualizing that. So we kind of make an educated guess at how it would look 500 reps down the track, right? And then here's the third thing we do. We just start doing that now. Right? Now, it doesn't always work. This is why, getting back to your original question, it was difficult for me to answer, because if I don't know anything about the subject, throwing frisbees, then my guess at what my 500 rep would look like is just a guess. And I think I would guess pretty well, like you would, about half and half, 50% of the time. I might be guessing wrong, but I can have an educated guess, even if I don't understand the subject. Now, if I do understand the subject, then my guess at what the 500th rep would look like can be very, very spot on, very, more likely to be right. So I start doing that right now. So that's why I was hesitating, wobbling back there on your question. Yeah, so I still think even if someone comes in as a beginner, they can learn to leverage their understanding in other areas of their life. Probably, make good guesses about how the thing would unfold after they practice it a lot and then leverage it somewhere else. But maybe they'll be wrong a fair bit of the time. But if you know a lot, you're much more likely to be right. Is that?
Yeah.
Did I say that clearly enough?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and it definitely helps. I think with some guidance, like you could stand in front of a class of like a kids class, fairly new kids, so clearly haven't mastered jiu-jitsu yet, and talk about them making progress. Their hard work is showing better results. And if they work hard at math or at reading, the same thing is going to happen to them. They're going to get better at it. They're not just naturally good or bad at something. The hard work is and that's one like lateral thing that you could just tell somebody, and I think it would be easy to understand for a lot of people, whether you're any good at jiu-jitsu or not. Yeah,
great, yeah. And ultimately, the really beneficial, because you're talking about, when you say something like that to a child, I guess, it's like you're making them realize that their life is all interconnected, right? And that's a great way to look at your life. Because if you over-compartmentalize, I'm a world champion at jiu-jitsu, how's the rest of your life looking? Oh, shocking. It's in shambles, I've got no savings. I've got no investment. I've got no, important or meaningful relationships. I don't have any fun time. My joints don't work anymore. Is that a better life? Now, my answer would be no. So you want to, I think, go into life realizing those things like what you've just pointed out. It's all, if I can learn to embrace the suck on the mat and realize that, by being in sucky positions makes me more resilient, it makes me, I can even learn to be happy in bad positions, then maybe I can start to think that way about other difficult parts of my life automatically as well. That is really great way to look at your life. So it's more authentic, it's more, what's the word, congruent all the way through your life. You're not really awesome over here. You pay wonderful attention to detail as you're training for the World Championships, but then you can't do the same thing anywhere else in your life, that to me is a tragedy.
Do you think that it's a tragedy on a short scale? Like if somebody is really good at jiu-jitsu and then they spend 2 months and they just 100% jiu-jitsu all the time and they go for that goal versus just 100% focus all the time. Is it okay in a short dose to try for that sort of thing?
Oh, no, of course. Yeah. Okay. No, of course, we have to remain focused and all of that. I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying focus, equally on everything. I'm not saying that. You have to obviously point your spotlight, at something, but it doesn't mean that, I can't get a sense of how the rest of the room looks,
Yeah.
I think that's silly. But of course you have to pay attention and be very focused. But you do need to realize that we are, all of us, living our lives. And jiu-jitsu is a part of our life. And I've just seen so many examples of people who they've done so well and they've just not shone that spotlight an inch left, right, up, down, or behind them. And so the rest of their life looks pretty bleak to me. So okay. Now, if you put your focus on something to the exclusion of everything else, right? You are going to be, or everything else being equal, you're going to be better at that. I'm saying if you just let's pick a topic we don't like. Like for me, it's something like money, finances. I'm uninterested. Yuck. I hate numbers. I don't like them. I think numbers are evil. I don't get it. And I don't want to know about it. However, it deserves 5% of my attention because it's important. Well, it might not be important to someone who's 20, but when you turn 61 years of age, you better own your house and have some money so you can make choices and do what you want, right? And train with who you want and do whatever. So at some point, it's going to be important. So I'm saying put 95% of your attention on jiu-jitsu, but make sure you put 5% on this other thing that matters, right?
Yeah.
And it might be on your relationships. It might be on your health. It might be on your garden. It might be on, whatever. But put something on there. I'm talking about 5%. I'm not talking about everything. So I don't want anyone to think, oh, wow, you mean I can't be a world champion? No, you absolutely can. Are you capable of doing two things at once? Are you capable of training like a world champion? Do you still have an hour a day? No, not even an hour a day, right? An hour a month, right? Can you find an hour a month to do some research on how to set up your 401k?
And once you set that up, it's done.
It's done, right?
Yeah.
So, or on anything, and do an hour a week on how to design your own home, or do an hour a week on how to improve your diet, an hour a month, right? And you'll be 12 hours ahead of 95% of the planet.
Yeah.
You don't seem to be focused on anything.
The good thing is even the top of the food chain jiu-jitsu, they train a lot and they're focused on their diet and mobility and all this stuff, but you can't do jiu-jitsu all the time. Like it doesn't work. So it's still, maybe you roll in the morning, roll at night, and lift weights. There's still hours and hours of the day that you're not actually able to train.
And we can all do lots in a short amount of time, right? I mean, seriously, right? Any one of us. We can all, you spend an hour on the internet. Oh my goodness, like just an hour a day on any subject you name, and by the end of the year, you will know more than most people on the planet will know about that thing for 52 hours a year. Can you find an hour? Can you find 10 minutes? 10 minutes a day. So, it reminds me of that, the book 4 Hour Work Week, right? That book, the 4 Hour Work Week. Yeah. So, what's his name?
Tim Ferriss.
Tim. Yeah. So Tim Ferriss. I mean, that's essentially, I guess, I'm doing him a disservice by, crunching it all down to this. But what he's saying is, yeah, what you guys are doing in 40 hours, I can get done in 4. So just don't muck around and
do the very important things.
Yes, do that. And you can do that with jiu-jitsu, and you can do it with anything else in your life. So, one of the great things that I love about being a professional martial arts coach is that I have all this time, like right now. So I'm having an interesting conversation with someone on the other side of the planet on Skype. How awesome is that? Because I've got the time to do it. A lot of people, they're time poor because they have a job, and by the time they get home from the job, then they do a training. They're just exhausted, and they've got not much time for anything else. So that's one of the things I love about what I do. And I've always loved that about martial arts. I've always been very cognizant of this idea that my time is the most important thing in the world to me. Not money, it's time, because that's a finite resource. And I don't want to trade 40 hours of it a week in something that I don't like. No way. And so, okay, now what's the trade-off for that? Well, I'll tell you what it was for the first, 20 years of my adult life. Poverty. Right? So, okay, if I'm not going to work, okay, I haven't got money, I can't do many things. But boy, have I got time. Oodles of it. 40 hours more than everyone else. And in that 40 hours, I could learn about leverage, and I could spend 1 hour a week learning about how to invest, and then whatever. So then when I did earn some money, I was really well positioned to go, I'll do what these really smart guys are doing. Right? So I think time, that's the big thing that people struggle with. Ultimately, they haven't got time.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing, because that's, in my view, that's all you've got.
And I think that's why I think jiu-jitsu is so important for so many people. Is after a little while, you know how to defend yourself. After a little while, you know so many of the moves, but it's just enjoying the time that you have with the people on the mats and doing a fun activity at the same time. I don't want to exercise. I want to go train jiu-jitsu, and I get exercise just because of what it is. And exercise to me, it doesn't always sound fun, but jiu-jitsu always sounds fun. I'm just lucky that helps me stay in shape. And then there's all these other things. I always get that from people who come. I get a lot of feedback after a year or so saying, I never realized I get that. I came for the self-defense, but that is not why I'm staying. The self-defense got me here. That's not what's keeping me here. So I love hearing that. Yeah. I never get sick of hearing that. Another thing I wanted to talk with you a little bit about is teaching styles. And I think a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, instructors are kind of just put into that place as you're the best person in the area. At jiu-jitsu, you start a school, and now you're running a school, or you're one of the more qualified students, and you start teaching classes. And you have, as you say on your blog, there's inherited teaching style, and then there's a teacher type of style that you could learn and develop. Talk about how you feel about those, and how somebody could get a better teaching style.
Wow, that's a very large subject.
Sorry about that.
You asked the difficult questions, Byron. I think that it's being mindful. It starts with being mindful and noticing, right? So if you do something, you notice something. So you do something. It's like, what is it? Cause and effect, right? Sure. We do that as kids. Like we do something. Oh, I do this thing. That thing happens. I go, wah, wah, wah. My mum comes running. So like a baby will work that out at the age of 1 hour. So we're all good at noticing things. And I think learning to teach is the same. So if you go up the front and you teach, but you're just in your own head, you're just about what you're doing, then nothing much is going to happen. But if you notice, okay, when I say it like this, if I break it down, level change, penetration step, fold the knee, connect with the partner, and then other leg comes up, pump the hip, and for a double leg or something, you break it down. You notice that when you use these words or these phrases and teach this way, you get this result. And then next time you do it, wow, I said it this way and did it from that angle, and I got that result. Note to self, must do it that way. So every single time we teach is an opportunity to regulate ourselves, to improve what we do. And anyone on the planet can do that. That's, to me, the most important thing. And over time, you will, like a heat-seeking missile, you'll hotter, colder. You just keep, I get a better result when I do it like that. But you've got to approach it and be willing to do tiny experiments, not crazy ones, but little ones, and try different methods of teaching, of saying it, of breaking it down, of what do you call it, offering the technique, different methods of offering it. And then you'll notice, if you're interested, you'll notice different outcomes. And then eventually you steer toward the better outcomes.
Yeah.
Of course, this works with numbers. So if you're only teaching one class a week, it's going to take you a long time to notice anything. If you're teaching 25 classes a week, you're going to notice things very, very quickly. So it does come down not so much to how smart you are. I actually don't rate intelligence that much. As a quality, I think industriousness, attention to detail, grit, perseverance, all kick intelligence's ass. If you do numbers, you learn stuff, and that's why I think everyone who gets really good at something goes through some part in their life where they just did lots of numbers. They did that 10,000 or 20,000 classes, or they did those hours, and then you go, wow, I noticed stuff, and not only notice, but therefore you've sniffed your way toward being able to do it better. And coaching and teaching is no different, right? So You teach one class a week, it's going to be tricky. You're going to have to find mentors to offer up things they've learnt to you. But if you do 25 classes a week, which I've gone through a period of my life where I was doing 30 classes a week for years. So you work out a few things, right? So
looking at what we talked about earlier about leveraging something laterally, that's really what you're doing here. With jiu-jitsu, if I'm rolling, I could either in my mind be fighting with somebody or trying to get better and train jiu-jitsu. I could be working, a certain type of shoulder lock or controlling somebody, whatever. I could have more of a direction while I'm training. And yes. So I could be fighting or I could be learning or a mix of both. But when you're teaching, you're not just teaching a class, you're also learning to teach better. And you have that active 100%. Goal. And I think that's a good example of what you're saying about learning something on the mats and then taking it off the mat. And technically you're still on the mat because you're teaching on the mat, but you got to get it to be a better teacher, and you do that by teaching. And I think you're doing something that's very valuable is you're experimenting a little bit with your teaching and seeing what works better versus just teaching 10,000 of the same as that class all the time. It changes a little bit, get some feedback, and look at how the students are they incorporating any of these techniques into their rolling, what made them do that a little bit more successfully. And it goes to teaching techniques, and it goes, I could tell, from teaching what you're teaching this week or this for the whole month or your theme of the 3 months or whatever you have. I think these are all things that you've picked up on and have brought over to being good teaching methods through either learning about teaching or experimenting with it with your own students.
Yes, I agree. And also, Byron, not just because I think if I'm being really completely frank with you, if you can do it for selfish reasons, like if you just go on the mat and teach the same thing, like say we go and teach upa, right? Basic bridging roll, like the basic upa. Everyone on the planet knows it. And you just see, it's very easy to go on the mat and say, well, I've taught this so many times to beginners. I've got a new private student and teach upa just to go through the motions. That is in my view, a silly way to do it, because you're not opening yourself up to maybe just this one time you'll see something you didn't see last week. So almost every single time I go on the mat, I try my best to say, I'm teaching this thing that I've taught for 25 years. I know it fairly well. I know what to say, but I'm just going to look at it this one time, just in case I'm looking at it a certain way. Maybe I'll spot something I've never seen. And I cannot tell you how many times I see something, I realize something, I notice something that I've never seen before. Every week. So it goes to mindset, right? And I do that not just because I want to be a better teacher. I'm doing it for a selfish reason. It keeps me interested, right? So if we're doing upa, I want to be interested in it because it's my time. So I want to look at it just this one time. I might be able to understand. So when I trap the arm, how am I trapping it? Where's the pressure? Down, laterally, which arm's in front of the others? Which one's got the tricep? When I trap his foot with my foot, as I move my head away to the opposite arm, we drop our thigh down. Why are we dropping our thigh on his leg? So he can't shift to side mount. Then when we start to take him off with the upper, I don't want to come up in a closed guard. So can I do a little elbow escape halfway through and come up into combat base? Right, so little things like that, you just notice, you look as if it's the first time you're doing it, every single time. And that keeps me interested, and that goes to, sustainability. So I can do it for 30 years because I'm interested. How often can you teach something just going through the motions? You'll go crazy in a year. So I think to be really passionate and really good at teaching, you've got to notice stuff. You've got to be into it. And to do that, you've got to be a little bit selfish. You're doing it for yourself. Now, the students get a collateral benefit. They get an awesome teacher, or they get someone who's really into it, right? But you do it because it keeps you interested for your lifetime. So I think the day you start just going through the motions in anything, I think it's time to leave.
Yeah.
Find something else.
You give an interesting example with Oompa, and I think some of it is, you might actually notice a detail that you hadn't been thinking about or been teaching one way or the other. But I think sometimes it's more enjoyable for the teacher to try to relate something to the student to where they understand. So if you're teaching Oompa to somebody, they don't know a whole lot about jiu-jitsu. So let's say you get a guy who's a car mechanic, and you're showing him Oompa, you teach him to move his feet closer to his butt so he has energy, like a spring in a car, like the shock absorbers. You're loading up the spring, and now you'll be able to, I think that's one way, as I was listening to you talk about the Oompa, you could personalize a lesson and try to communicate that, and it probably will set a little bit better than if you just go through the motions and teach the same class you've taught 10,000 times before.
And by doing what you just said, finding a way, you're taking a novel view of it. And if you do that, 500 times, look at the same thing, 500 different, as if maybe you'll see it a little bit different angle today. You're going to know more about that thing.
Yeah.
Than looking at it from one perspective. My coach, Hagen Machado, used to say, you got to kick open the door and walk around the elephant. So if I look through the keyhole, I get this one narrow view of some part of the elephant. If I kick open the door and walk around it, I've got to look at it from as many different angles as I can. I go, okay, got it. And we have to keep kicking the door open every day. Yeah.
That's fun. I've never heard that one. I can't imagine the door that's holding back an elephant, but great kick you have if you're able to bust that an elephant can't. But that's a good, I like that. You got to kick up the door and then have a look at the whole picture.
Whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And every day. Because it might be different next day. Yeah. Well, it's not different. Let's be specific. Let's be clear. It's not different. You're different.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, say you teach me how to do upa, and you teach me, in the best possible way you can. But when I'm first learning something, I'm the least qualified to understand and appreciate the nuance that you're talking about. So I say, Byron's taught me upa. I come back 5 years later as a purple belt, and you teach me Upa again. I go, wow, this Upa's really improved. The Upa hasn't improved. I've improved to the point where I can understand what you're talking about. Then I come back as a black belt, and then you teach me Upa again. And I go, that Upa has really developed over these last 10, 12 years. And Byron, he's awesome now. I can't believe how nuanced he is in his coaching. And all the time it was me getting better, because as a black belt, I've got a different brain, a different way of looking at it. So when you say what you say, it resonates 100% with me. So the techniques don't change. The world doesn't change. We change.
Yeah, I like that. A little bit off the mat stuff here. I like to ask you how you're doing. Are you doing much backpacking and that sort of thing?
Not much. It's winter here. I mean, I was in Europe. I was over there. I did a bit of teaching in Europe a little while ago. I teach a lot of seminars. And after that, I'd take a couple of weeks off. My wife and I just went through Italy. So that's the opposite to backpacking. But I get my taste of the wild at the end of the year in our summer, which is like November. And then I've got a few things going on then. Or a couple of weeks in New Zealand after I finish a bunch of seminars over there. I head into the mountains with a backpack on, do a bit of trekking. And then I've got couple of other things over the summer in the Pacific and different places. Yeah, so that's coming up.
Wow. I remember the first interview I had with you. You mentioned that you do that, and I thought that was really pretty amazing. And it's been several years, but my wife and I have gotten into backpacking and
nice.
Have a good time. And actually, in a few months, we're going to be backpacking in the Grand Canyon from rim to rim. So that should be a pretty interesting experience.
Yeah, I've got lots of hints. So off the interview, but feel free to Facebook me. I can give you some ideas on packing your pack.
Yeah.
I used to do like a 25 kilo pack. I don't know what that is in pounds, like 60 pounds. But now I'm down. Now my pack is only 12 kilos, like 20, 25 pounds at the most. But everything's in there, So I've worked out how to go very light, because the experience is then different. You can swim with that backpack on. You can, you don't even know it's on your back. So it changes the whole experience going super lightweight.
Yeah. And a lot of that's with the technologies and all that has changed. Well, cool. I'll hit you up for that later on, and I'll take any advice I can. The good thing is they have places to get fresh water, several spots, so I don't have to carry a bunch of water on me, and that's a lot of weight that I could avoid.
One time I went into the Sierra Nevadas with my friend David Meyer.
Yeah.
And I took him on just a short one, because he was kind of a virgin, right? So I took him on a 4 or 5 day. And we're walking on the trail, day one, in the middle, off Mono Hot Springs, in the middle of the Sierra Nevada. So when there's one little trail goes up this river, we're walking on the trail, and about half the day off the trail, we went, okay, let's just turn right. We're going to go down there about 10 miles, and then there's a bunch of little lakes. He goes, whoa, what are you talking about? The trail doesn't go there. Because Americans walk on trails. I thought that was hysterical, because we don't do trails. There are no trails out here. So
wow.
So we head off, right? He's got this giant backpack. He's got 4 books in it, George Carlin and all these books that he wants to read at nighttime. He's got the heaviest. He's a vegan, so he's got tofu. He's got a watermelon in his pack. So we head off trail. We're going down there, and he's not. We get halfway through the day. We're thirsty. So there's a little spring coming out of the ground. I drop to my knees. I start drinking the water. He goes, what are you doing? You'll die. You'll get Giardia. And I go, wait, it's a spring. It's snow melt. You'll be fine, mate. He goes, no way. And he's got one of these things that, what do you call it? It's like a filter you pump.
Yeah.
Right? So he's got this thing at REI. He's pulled it out. He's plugged it in. He's gone, pump 1, David, strong, exploded it into 8 bits. Now he can't drink. So he's going, I'm going, David, forget the pump. Just put your head in that thing and drink it. No way, he says. By the end of the day, it's 6 o'clock when we found these little lakes where we're going to make our first camp. He's dying of dehydration. Still, even then, I had to get the water, boil it, let it cool before he drank at about 7 p.m. He was delirious. I was just slurping out of the nearest puddle. It was very funny. So when you say water, yeah, it is strange.
Oh, that's funny. Watermelon, I can't believe yeah.
David, because he thought, like, David's got this mindset when I wanted to buy him a bike for his birthday a long time ago, like a bicycle, because he likes riding around San Francisco hills where he lives. And I said, I want to buy this new bike. It's really tricky. You know, it's like a $2,000 bike, right? Like all tricky. It folds up and it's got 10 gears. And he goes, no, he's got this old rusty piece of crap, but he likes it because it makes it hard. It doesn't have gears. He goes, why am I riding? It's for exercise. Why would I want gears? Why do I want a light bike? It's for exercise. So David wants the worst bike you can get, you know. So he wants to pack his pack to get exercise. But I tell you what, when you've got a 65, 70, 75-pound pack with 4 books in it at the end of 10-hour day in the heat with no drinking, he regretted it. But it was funny because he was reading me George Carlin excerpts, made me laugh as I went to sleep.
You got to benefit from his labors on that one with the book.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's funny. Before I let you go, any final words for those out there listening and training?
Yeah, I guess attend to your training like your life depends on it. Because even if it's not serious, you don't want to be a world champion, you are trading your time for it. And that is exactly what your life consists of, time. So you're trading, all of the time we are trading our time for whatever we're doing. So, if you're doing it, whatever it is, not jiu-jitsu, anything, be fully attentive. It doesn't matter what it is. And that would be something, I guess, is very important to me. You don't have to be smart, but yet people who are successful in their lives, they're all industrious. And at some point, the really successful people all pay attention to detail, and they persevere and they stay focused. And if you're intelligent, that supercharges the whole thing. But I think it's negotiable. You don't have to be. But we are trading our time for whatever we're doing. So if you realize that your time is valuable, then get as much as you can out of the deal that you're making every second. I'll finish with that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on, Byron, and thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, John. I made a lot of notes. I can't wait to share this with my friends.
Man, thanks so much, John, for hopping on here with us. It's always challenging to schedule somebody in Australia. They're not just like a few hours difference. It's a different day a lot of times, and he was able to get up in the morning and record while it was evening for us. So I really appreciate him doing that. And man, always so cool to talk to. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'll throw some links into the other interviews he's involved with us on. A lot of good conversations in those interviews, and we'll get him back. If we're still around, we'll have him back in the future. That's the way it is. Why would we not?
Wait, Byron. What was that? If we're still around?
If we're still, I don't know. There's no reason that we wouldn't be around. But so expect him back in the future.
There we go.
Follow him on social media. He's got one of the coolest grappling blogs out there. He posts all the time. Like they're short paragraph or two, and he'll just kind of just say what he's thinking up there, and a lot of wisdom and wit coming from John, and we do occasionally highlight those on our article of the weeks.
Yeah, and years of experience. He's, I think, 61, and he's been doing martial arts pretty much his whole life. I actually appreciate his take on family and jiu-jitsu, his wife, his son, and so it was great, man.
Well, we've often talk about John Will's articles on the article of the week, not this week. We have to spread the love out a little bit there. We went to CarlsonGracieIndy.com, and they've got something I think we don't talk about a whole lot because I think it's pretty basic, but we can't take that for granted too much. 12 tips to better hygiene when training BJJ, or sometimes it's just anybody training or doing anything, just hygiene stuff. But I hate to think that some of our listeners are out there and they're the stinky person on the mat, or they're the person that's giving everybody a fungus. So not today, guys. We're gonna sit down and go through the awkward phase of puberty where we talk about hygiene.
Well, 1 out of 3 people on the mats is stinky, and I know it's not me, and I know it's not Gary. So,
oh man,
that is you, Byron.
There we've narrowed it down.
Yeah,
that's why I'm isolated from you two right now.
Yeah, we don't want to be in the same room, but I think one of the biggest ones is wash your gi. You hear this all the time, and I think you brought it up last week, Byron, about being done with practice, put your gi in a gym bag and leave it there, and then pull it out. The next class, you haven't washed it, it hasn't even dried. So definitely wash your gi and dry it thoroughly. You don't want to be the stinky guy, and that's not gonna. You don't want to be that guy. Let's put it that way. Even talks about, don't just spray some odor neutralizer on it. That is not going to suffice. Even if you don't wash it, not only is it going to stink, you can give your partners, your teammates, ringworm. You definitely don't want to give them ringworm, impetigo, or any of those great funguses. So wash your gi, and everything will be great in that regards.
Yeah, and I'll add into that there is no magic in your belt, so you can't wash it out. Go ahead and throw that sucker in the wash too, and keep it clean.
Yeah, and we're talking about washing your gi. Number 2 there, wash your knee braces or joint supports. I can't think of how many times I went to grab a single leg, and and all of a sudden I just about pass out. I'm like, what the heck is that? I don't think somebody washed their knee brace. Knee brace, same thing, going to hold a lot of fungus, going to smell terrible. So definitely wash knee braces, joint supports.
Yeah, you should. Go ahead.
I like number 3. It has to do with your gym bag. I actually don't put my gi back in my gym bag when I leave class. I put it on the top of the gym bag in between my straps because I have boxing gloves, MMA gloves, knee brace, things I don't use all the time, but they're in there. Unicycles,
skateboards,
juggling pins,
chainsaws.
Yeah, and I don't want that stuff to get dirty. So, I don't actually put my gi back in my bag. I just drape it on top, take it home. I put it straight in the wash, or at least in the laundry room for the next load. And so that's a good point that I hadn't really thought about articulating before. But in practice, I just don't put a dirty gi back in my bag.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It goes on top of the bag. It's not only soaked in my sweat, it's everybody's sweat. And there's no reason to be putting that inside your bag because it's hard to, if you think about trying to clean that inside your bag, that's really difficult. Just keep it clean to begin with. If it goes in the bag, it should be clean.
Even with those good practices, it doesn't hurt to spray your bag with Lysol once a week or something, and just keep everything sanitary.
You're going up and above and beyond, Joe. You got me beat on that one. That's smart. So I am the stinky guy, evidently. Dang it. It talks about removing jewelry. Remove jewelry for your own safety, 1, for the safety of your training partners, 2, and then also it could harbor bacteria. If you have a ring on your hand, maybe the area underneath your ring isn't getting really all that clean. And it's good to remove that if you can. You see pictures occasionally online of, hey, take your ring off while you roll, or this will happen, and someone's hand has been degloved. That's not real. That's a machine accident or something with other moving parts involved than a person. What happens is if you break that finger, it's going to swell up, and the ring gets stuck on there. They'll have to cut the ring or cut the finger off, and you get a choice which one to lose. And hopefully it's going to be the ring pretty quick before it gets too much pressure built up. But it's not a good idea to roll with jewelry on unless you can't take it off because it's stuck already. So in that case, you probably should get it taken off anyway. But remove jewelry. It'll keep you a little bit cleaner and make you safer as well.
Yeah, Byron, you're talking about, fingers. One big thing is always trim your finger and toenails. I always make a joke when I roll somebody whose fingernails or toenails are long and I get done, I've got scratches and cuts all over me. I always say I ended up rolling with Freddy Krueger, and nobody wants to have a whole bunch of little cuts on them. It's never fun taking a shower afterwards. So definitely keep your fingernails and toenails trim.
Yeah, and it's not just the hassle of I get scratched up and it's uncomfortable, but that's how you get staph infection and those kind of nasty things.
Good point.
You get a break in the skin, and next thing you know, you got something nasty. So that's a great point.
Yep. And Joe was talking about gym bags earlier. A lot of people will carry nail clippers in their gym bag. Never a bad idea to have that in there in your gym bag.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yep.
I once a month, maybe every 2 months, I'm outside the gym in the parking lot clipping my fingernails because I think they're a little too long. I just get them before I go in and help prevent people from getting cut accidentally. Now, cut on purpose is a whole different category.
Yeah, and Byron does that a lot, but it depends on if he likes you or not.
Yeah, you got to show some appreciation to people and give them a little cut of love. I don't know. Gary mentioned this one, wearing deodorant. I mean, that's just polite to your training partners. You should also do that off the mat as well.
Good point.
You get more hugs if you do, and hugs make you feel good.
You got to be careful, though. Deodorant's one thing, but if you've seen the commercials, be careful with that Axe body spray.
Though, I've tried it. It doesn't work like that, Joe, for me. I wish it did. That's why I bought it. One thing Joe, myself, and Byron don't have to worry about is number 9, tie your hair back. We don't have a lot of hair between us, but so we don't really have to tie it back. But, make sure your hair is tied back so it does not get into you and your partner's way. It doesn't get caught on the ground underneath somebody's knee and you try to pull your head away. It could be very painful.
Or get in your mouth.
Yeah. Yep. That's always fun.
Take a deep breath, and next thing you know, you got a whole mouthful of someone's hair.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or, really long hair. I guess you could even use it to choke somebody. So, we can use it to our advantage.
Yeah. And sometimes, hair, even when you pull it back, it ends up getting pulled a little bit. And you try to pull, hey, sorry, I'm trying to pull your hair here. I'm trying to get your collar and trying to choke you unconscious, but not trying to pull your hair. And, so,
because that's when you talk like that, because it always would drive me crazy when I'd roll with you, because you'd always be like, "Oh, come on, Gary, pull my hair harder," and it would make me feel uncomfortable. So I'd stop rolling with you.
Well, I messed up that opportunity, didn't I? Another big one: don't train when you're sick.
Yes.
Don't get your teammates sick. It's easy to think about like ringworm and staph and that sort of thing. If you have a cold, take a couple of days off, do some off the mat training. If you have the legitimate like flu or something like that, don't go to work, don't go to train. Sorry, it's not going to be that fun. But and then spend a little bit of time afterwards, like a day or two or whatever the incubation time is afterwards of it still being around. I don't know if incubation is the word at the end of it or at the beginning. I know it'd be at the beginning. But sometimes you could feel good and still be contagious. Make sure that time passes before you get everybody sick. Not cool.
Not cool at all.
So we've hit a few of these. There's definitely more on here. But I think if you're kind of in these categories, shower immediately after class, that's pretty simple. So here's my routine. I come home. I throw anything that got sweaty, including my belt, into the washing machine, start it, and then I go take a shower immediately. Done with the shower, get a little bit to eat, take the stuff out of the washing machine and hang it up to dry, put a fan on it, and I've done what I need to do to stay clean. And it all happens within 30 minutes of me getting home, probably 20 minutes of me getting home. Use soap when you're showering. So a lot of times Gary kind of forgets the soap thing, or he's trying to save a couple bucks, and he doesn't forget to shower, but sometimes he forgets to use soap.
Soap, what is that, Byron?
Yeah, I'll send you some more. I give him soap every Christmas, and by...
Well, if you give me more than one bar.
Yeah, by November, he's out. He's like, I used the whole bar of soap already, and he's getting kind of rank. And so he's still in the soap phase of his year right now, but it won't be long and he'll run out of that bar. And you could get there's a lot of like jiu-jitsu brand soaps. That's fine. You don't even need to do that. You just need to use it. Gary, please.
At the BJJ summer camp, one of our listeners and friends there from Kansas City, Mindy Ashby, actually got me some grappling soaps. So I used it there till I ran out, and it was awesome. And I wish I could remember the name of the company. It's her friend's company, but it was really good stuff.
Cool.
So I really appreciate that.
And really, Mindy, we really appreciate that. People have to be around Gary, because that was probably some of the better time.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the name of the company. I'd give him a shout out. But I'll try to find it, and I'll give him a shout out next week.
Hey, find it, and we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll be in the show notes if Gary texts it to me. There's a lot of jiu-jitsu soap companies. Why not a jiu-jitsu deodorant company, huh? Why not? And you can go two ways with that. You could go with the smell like you just got done training, or smell nice, but it's kind of a jiu-jitsu style of a brand. Maybe you're the soap company.
Smell like you just got done training.
It's kind of like cauliflower ear, Gary. It's a badge of honor.
You may think it's a bad idea, but it's really cool. No, but you're making soap. Why not make a deodorant as well? I don't know if that's a whole big different category, but more stuff to sell, same category of hygiene. Or a jiu-jitsu style like loofah, so Gary could actually scrub his dead skin cells off his body.
Well, isn't that what a gi is for?
I'll give you that, Gary. You got me.
Okay.
So there'll be a link in the show notes to the article. If you have any, there's not a lot of gray areas in like my hair in hygiene. Come to the mats, be clean, stay clean. Another big one that they have on here: don't go barefoot into the bathroom. So if you're new, that may not sound like that big of a deal, but the bathrooms aren't necessarily clean on the floor. It's hard to keep those clean for very long. And then your feet end up on the mat, and then our faces end up where your feet have been. It's connect the dots on that one. We want the mats to be as clean as we can, and part of that is to wear footwear in the bathroom, to wear footwear when you walk into the gym. If you look at the old samurai uniforms, they got all their gear and their gi, kimono or whatever, and sword, whatever. They have little flip flops on. It's part of the uniform. In reality, flip flops are part of a jiu-jitsu uniform. You just don't wear it while you train. You wear it to keep you clean.
Yep. Think about ninjas, Byron. Ninjas, they dressed in an all-black uniform. They had those split black shoes, and, they carried around some stars and some smoke bombs. And, they had shoes, too. Yeah,
it's very important. You got to take care of your feet, too. So we'll put a link in the show notes. Check them out. We want you guys to be clean, and it'll keep you on the mats longer. It'll keep more people happy to roll with you. Nobody wants to roll with a stinky person. Sorry, Gary, you get to roll with nobody today. But...
and I always thought it was just because I was good. I guess not.
Good and stinky. No, I thought I was a stinky guy, but I'm trying to pass the buck. But there is some good news. We have a Mat Tales coming up, so here we go.
This is Mat Tales. We bring you amazing jiu-jitsu stories. The stories might be funny, unfortunate. It could be about an epic fail or an epic win. So sit back, my friend, relax, dry off your sweat from rolling, and enjoy Mat Tales.
I've heard of EMTs, doctors, and paramedics that practice BJJ, but apparently my coach is an amateur dermatologist. I've always had a mole on my neck, nothing too big, but for most of my life, I've had an irrational fear of somebody accidentally doing something to the mole. This fear is pervasive enough that when I get my hair cut, I place my finger over the mole when the barber's clippers get a little close. It was my third month of being a white belt, and my coach was teaching the bow and arrow choke to the class. We practiced multiple times on each other, and we switched every few minutes. After a little while, I switched and ended up with my coach. He performed the choke on me very well. It was very tight. Nothing too bad. My neck did feel like it got a little bit of a rug burn. After that, we switched partners yet again, and my new partner noticed I had a little bit of blood that ended up on his gi. We checked ourselves, not seeing anything. I instinctively reached back for my neck. Sure enough, my neck was bleeding, and my mole was ripped off. Or rather, it was about 3/4 of the way ripped off. Still barely attached to my neck. But with that, I called it a day and made an appointment for my dermatologist to go ahead and remove the rest of the mole. Part of me wishes that I had Coach do just one more bow and arrow choke to me and finish off the mole. Because even though my coach took off 3/4 of the mole, my doctor charged me full price, and it was all out of pocket. Although my monthly gym fee is about 3/4 of what I pay for the doctor's visit, perhaps I was just getting what I paid for. The good news is I no longer have an irrational fear about the mole on my neck. So I guess, in a way, my coach is also an amateur psychiatrist, as well as a dermatologist, as well as my jiu-jitsu coach.
This has been Matt Tales. Some of the names and places may have changed. We may in fact have taken some creative liberties with the story. In order to keep Matt Tales going, we need more tales. Tales from listeners like you. Send your tales to BjjBrick@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing your amazing stories.
Whatever that guy's paying his coach, it sounds like he needs to triple it. BJJ coach, dermatologist, and psychologist.
Thanks. That was. I think it'll help a little bit if that was Jason. I'm not going to give a last name, keep it kind of anonymous, but thanks, Jason, for sending that in. And we look forward to doing more Mad Tales. Haven't done very many lately. A combination of being a little bit busy and haven't got what we're looking for in. So if you have a kind of an odd story, send it in. Help us out, and we'll make a fun story out of it. Make a fun Matt Tale. That was Matt Tale number 26. Calling it neck mole, I guess.
Well, Joe just mentioned that, that the coach, not only being a coach, he's a psychologist, he's a dermatologist. I mean, 3 in 1. And one thing we always talk about, and we talked about at the start of the show, is the benefits of jiu-jitsu. So this guy's got some major benefits. Not only is he learning jiu-jitsu, he's got he should have, had the coach take the rest of it off and would have saved some money. But, he's getting dermatology work done and psychology work done. So definitely helped Jason out.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure my coach is hobbyist, what do you call that, a chiropractor.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
coaches are multi-talented people.
Yeah, a lot of coaches, are like steamrollers.
Yep.
They're just going to smash you.
And he's trying to help me become a, what do you call that, a contortionist?
Another jack of your trades right there, Joe.
That's right.
Yeah, it's good to appreciate your coaches for all their different skills, and it may seem like they're all jiu-jitsu related, but sometimes somebody's a hidden dermatologist or a steamroller.
But definitely send us in if you're listening and you have some crazy story. Send us your Mad Tale. Send an email to BjjBrick@gmail.com.
Yep, it's been quite a while. I kind of, hey, that was fun while it lasted, but we haven't done them for a while. We kind of quit asking for them. This one came in out of the blue, and I was like, this is pretty fun. This is an interesting story. It's pretty fun. Sorry to get your mole ripped off while you're training, but we could all benefit from odd experiences on the mats. And go back and listen to some old Mat Tales if you need some. The easy way to do it would be search the website for Mat Tale, and they'll pop up. I also made a little audiobook style of some of them together, but I don't know.
I still remember the one that guy wanted to go to a seminar and left work. He was talked to his boss and was going to get out of work early, and he was so excited. And he leaves work and goes in the restroom to change to go to the seminar, and the door handle falls off, and he gets locked in and misses the seminar. I'll still never forget that one.
Yeah, that one was
that
awesome.
would be a rough one.
That would be frustrating.
Yeah.
One thing that's not frustrating is our Patreon team. And we've got a team of people. I'm going to give a shout out to a few of them. Rodney, Dane, and Caleb are some of our newest members on the team, and we definitely appreciate you guys. What you could do is go to Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. If you want to support us, you can pledge a certain amount per every episode. $1 is the most common. You could do like $3 if you really want to be a super supporter and support Gary athletically. Basically, every time an episode comes out, these people are pledging $1 or around there. And at the end of the month, it'll charge your credit card or whatever you put on file there. And that money goes to help keep the show going, goes to help keep the show become even better and more professional. Well, I don't know about the professional part. Sound better. Some episodes are more professional than others. But what we'll do is we can't pay you back literally like Gary would, like how he has your back. But we can pay you back as like a token of appreciation. We'll mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch. We'll send you out a sticker. If you want to join our private Facebook group, send me an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com. Say, hey, I'm on Patreon. I would like to join the private Facebook group. And occasionally you'll get to ask questions to the people that are that we're interviewing and that sort of thing. And yeah, a lot of good times. I still have one autographed picture of Gary to send out. So if you're clamoring for that, don't wait much longer.
You should raffle that off.
We should raffle that off. It's a hot item, and it's
definitely a hot item. I noticed most of the people who get it actually burn it. That's how hot it is.
Oh, Gary, you're too hard on yourself. If you're new to this show, what happened? I presented Gary with some pictures to sign live on episode 250, and it was just basically a prank we pulled on the guy, and he signed a few of them, and we're mailing those out now to the Patreon supporters to kind of continue with the prank, although he's not involved directly anymore. But it's kind of funny.
Well, not only did I sign him, but then I find out from Byron I signed him in the wrong spot, too. So I get in trouble for that. You name it, I get in trouble for it.
Yeah. I designed the pictures with like a large space in the middle or off to the side. That'd be great for a signature with this big Sharpie pen I brought. And he turns them over, signs on the back of them. So when you put it in the frame, frame it and put it up on your wall in your house, in your living room, you can't see the signature and the actual picture at the same time. You get to pick one or the other. And I'm guessing you go with not the picture of Gary.
Yeah, when people have a signed picture of Elvis, they like to have that signature hidden on the back.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can tell I'm not popular. I don't even know where to sign.
Well, he's more of he's a business transaction guy, and there was no dotted line. They should have put a dotted line, and he would have aced it. But he's a good sport.
Yep. Well, hey, if you give him back, I think I can notarize my signature, Byron.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool. We'd like to connect with you guys any way you see fit. Most popular ways to connect. The most popular is the podcast that we're doing right now. After that, it's going to be Facebook. Joe does a lot on there. I'm trying to become a little bit more active, but that's not really... I don't know. I need to get on there more. Gary, you need to step up, my man, and post occasionally on the Facebook. We like to comment sometimes on there. But, yeah, if you send us a message, that's the key. If you send the BjjBrick crew a message, a lot of times you get responses from all three of us. If you ask a question, hey,
we'll drive you crazy. Like somebody sent us a message the other day, and I think all three of us were responding at the same time.
That was the first time I've seen you respond in a while, Gary. I know that you like to only be maintaining one social media platform, and you're still pretty busy with MySpace, but appreciate you taking time.
That was funny.
It's helping his music career.
Yeah, Little Spandex is my music name.
But we also have an app. If you're kind of new to podcasts, or make it a little easier for you to download the show, or somebody else is unfamiliar with podcasts, help them go download the app. Everybody knows how to download an app, I guess. Wherever you download apps, look for BJJBrick. It'll pop up, and you can play a podcast in there and have good times within the app itself. Oh, my goodness. So that's nice and fun.
And if that's not enough interaction with the BJJ Brick crew, if you're in the area, come train with us. If you're in Wichita, Kansas, that's where Gary and Byron are, and they'd love to get on the mats with you. If you're in the Houston, Texas area or just south of there, let me know. You can contact us through Facebook, and I'd love to train with you as well.
Yep, and we're all, if that's the case, Gary does shower just for the guests, so don't have to worry about that.
I promise I'll shower.
There we go. Guys, it's been a great week. I want to thank John Will again, and look forward to having him on the show in the future. Go back and listen to the old episodes with him. They're timeless. A lot of these episodes, we try to ask questions that aren't about, like, hey, what's this next tournament? What's going to be like? We ask questions that are just jiu-jitsu topics that won't necessarily fade over time. Have that evergreen interview with somebody, and that's our goal here. So but his old episodes will be just as interesting as this one. Anyway, I'll put links to those in the show notes. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower and trim your nails.
Train hard, train smart, train clean, get better, and we'll see you on the mats, guys.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.